This is Andrew Hall, host of Dead Hand Radio. My guest for this episode is Kevin Kammann, musician, former U.S. Navy corpsman, and UFO abductee. In 1982, Kevin had an experience that changed his life and simultaneously upended his perception of reality and solidified his belief system. We talk about the details of his experience and the knowledge he gained during and after this encounter. Then we talk about the negative and positive effects the event had on his life. Kevin's experience lasted about an hour and involves time travel, a trip to the moon, an encounter with giant insectoid-looking aliens, and images of the apocalypse. It's a fascinating journey and one worth hearing.
Hi, this is Kevin Kammann, musician, former Navy corpsman, UFO abductee, and you're listening to Dead Hand Radio.
So let's talk a little bit more about your background before we get into the experience that you had, if that's okay.
Sure.
Would you tell me what part of the country did you grow up in?
I grew up in the Midwest, just south of Chicago, in a town called Kankakee, Illinois. It's 60 miles straight south of Chicago.
So you've pretty much been in that area your whole life other than your military experience, right?
Yes. I was born in Indiana, but we moved to Illinois, I think by the time I was 3 or 4, and then grew up, in Kankakee, went to high school, worked at the hospital there. And my job working at the hospital got me interested in the medical field. So I joined the Navy right after I graduated high school. And I became a hospital corpsman. I joined on February the 28th, 1973.
Well, thank you for your service.
Because I went back in 1978. And then I got assigned to the USS San Bernardino, a tank landing ship. And the tank landing ship has got a flat bottom, and it goes right up onto the beach, and the front end opens up, and you can offload tanks, trucks, and other vehicles. And we carried approximately 300 Marines all ready for combat. And I was a grunt corpsman.
So you would have gone into combat with those guys?
I could have. Matter of fact, see, our ship, once we go on the beach, we're not coming off. So, in my mind, that says target, big X right here. All right? Home in on this. So I guarantee you I'm going to be as far away from that thing as I can be. I'm going to join the Marines because I'd spent time with the Marines and I knew how to operate with the Marines. And I would be a lot safer with the Marines once we got onto the beach than I would be with the sailors. Sorry, but that's just the way I feel about it. And hey, every man for himself.
Well, and from, I was not in the Navy. I was in the Air Force. And then I did a tour in Army National Guard. But my understanding is that the medics for the Marine Corps are Navy corpsmen. Is that correct?
That's right. The Navy has, the Marines have no medical personnel of their own. All their medical personnel come from the Navy. And I found that out the hard way when I got assignment to Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base, where I went through 8404 medical field training, and that was roughly 12 weeks long.
Was that basically combat medical training?
Yes. Wearing the gear, going out, hiking, sleeping in the woods, being a Marine.
Yeah. But really, that's, in my opinion, that's the fun part of being a grunt. Living out in the element.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, most guys do. Most people do that have served enjoy that time that they get to spend outdoors. Is that something that all Navy corpsmen have to go through, that
No.
training?
No.
Okay, so you were one of the people that was selected to, if need be, go into combat with those guys.
Yeah.
And then how long was your second tour, or did you stay in until you retired?
Well, I had planned on staying in until I got retired, but due to circumstances, and that's a totally another story, and I don't want to get into it. But I went back in '78. I spent 6 years on this ship. I was a corpsman on there for 4.5 years.
So is there any fond memories you have of your time in the Navy that you'd like to share?
Well, let's see. I was stationed in Philadelphia for 2 years, and I got quite the education. Being in a major city for the first time, I seen all kinds of crap. I worked on ambulances, and so I seen a lot of gross and disgusting things. And I had seen more and done more by the time I was 25 than a lot of people will ever do, living a 60-year lifespan. And I knew it, all right, because of the unique experiences that I had. I watched a man blow his brains out with a gun. I delivered babies. I had a 6-week-old baby die in my arms. I watched 3 people burn to death in a car. All these educational experiences that, you never knew what you were going to get from day to day. So being a hospital corpsman, it was very interesting. I did sick call on a daily basis at the dispensary. And then I got transferred to Camp Under Marine Corps Base, where I went through the training there. And then when I graduated with my training, I had become a qualified paramedic in California. And I was assigned to an ambulance crew right out from graduation. And I did that all the way up until the day I got out in '77. And that was a unique experience. The very first night I worked on the ambulance crew, I saved a heroin overdose's life. And that was a calamity of errors in itself. I mean, you want to talk about a story that's hard to believe. And everything I would say would be fact, all right? And it was just a big clusterfuck. But it turned out all right, all right? But I started at 3:30 in the morning, got over with around 5.
5 p.m. or 5
5 a.m.
Okay.
An hour and a half working on the patient, getting into the emergency room and all that. I got my ass chewed out. I got threatened to get rolled up. I broke the microphone in the ambulance, so they had no communication with us. And so it just caused a calamity of errors. I mean, it was one of those, you're not going to believe. It's like the movie Spinal Tap. Are you familiar with that?
I have seen parts of it, and I heard many, many quotes from the movie.
Well,
I know the movie, but I've never seen it.
The movie Spinal Tap is basically a story about anything and everything that can go wrong with a rock band. That's what the movie is. Anything and everything that can go wrong. All right. To a typical rock band. And it's 90% true. And me being in the band, I know some of the circumstances. So,
Well, I do want to get into your music background a little bit too, but before we go down that road, would you talk about your time after the military? Did you continue working in the medical field, or did you go into a completely different line of work after that?
I stayed in the medical field for 2 years, and then once my paramedic license expired, I never renewed it. I changed careers.
Do you ever miss working in that field?
No. I have lots and lots and lots of memories. And no, I don't miss it. I'm around it all the time because of my medical problem. and I see the changes that have been made and everything else going on in the medical field, and I'm glad I'm not in it anymore, especially with this COVID crap.
The musical background that you have, how early on did you find out that you were musically inclined?
Oh, 18, 19 years old. I have a twin brother who had been playing the guitar since he was 14. And then I took up the guitar at 18. And it was something for me to do while I was in the Navy, when I had spare time. So I started to learn how to play the guitar. Well, after my brother went into the Air Force. And he spent 4 years in the Air Force. But he went in August of 73. So when he got out in August of 77, we put together a band, started writing songs and going out and performing.
What kind of music was it?
Well, the originals were all written about military life. We were writing a CD that was a musical tribute to the Vietnam veteran. We wrote a bunch of songs, and we finally got our CD put out in the year 2010. And then we had a calamity. Well, we had all of our equipment stolen. All the CDs got stolen, except about the first 100 of them. And we'd only gotten rid of 100 of them. We'd only been back in Kankakee for about 3 days, and we got rid of close to 100 of them. They came 100 to a box, and we put the rest of them in storage out in California, along with all of our gear, which got broken into, and everything got taken out of there. So clean, they swept the fucking thing clean. Not one thing remained in that spot. And we're talking keyboards from the 60s and the 70s. You know, we're talking vintage gear. We took good care of the equipment that we had, and we accumulated quite a bit. We had like 4 or 5 different keyboards. We had about 9 guitars, about 7 amps. Plus, we had I had a 4-track tape recorder, and we were making records for other people off of the. We would record them, and then they would go out and get cassettes made with the master tapes that we gave them. We were a little bit into the music scene in Kankakee, helping people make music. And we ran sound for a few bands that would come through every now and then. But we mainly concentrated on making our own music. It took us into 2010 to get enough music to come out with a CD, originals. When we went in to record it, turns out we had enough for 2 CDs. So our debut CD is a 2 CD set with about 22 songs altogether. And there are 2 songs that are on there that were given to us to put on there, to help sustain the cause. Them guys went out and sacrificed a lot, and they never got credit for it. They got yelled at, screamed at, pissed on. They got treated like crap when they came back. They were never given any acknowledgement. I'm having people coming up today and telling me, thank you for my service. And that's because I'm wearing a Vietnam-era veteran hat. And so they do come up and they thank me today. But they didn't do that in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, And I think it's interesting that the attitude toward that has changed that much, since then. We're talking something that's almost 50 years old.
Yeah, that was a pretty sore spot in history for the U.S., the way that those Vietnam veterans were treated. And I think it's a noble and a very caring thing that you did to create that music. When you and your brother were making music, I can only imagine it must have been, you guys had some great times together. I'm sure there's challenges that you had to overcome as well. Not barring the tragedy or the calamities, as you called it, of losing all your, or getting all your music and your instruments taken from you. I'm sure you had some good times.
Yeah, we had a lot more bad times than we had good times.
Well, that's called life, right?
Well, it's called family too.
That's true. Yeah.
So I mean, look, there was nothing spectacular about what we did. We're just like 40 million other people out there, recording music. There's people doing it every day. And we had a gift, and we wrote a few songs, and I feel that a couple of them were pretty decent songs. I didn't agree with all the songs. I didn't agree with everything that was said. However, I did my part.
Well, at least you did it. That's what's the important part is. You guys made the effort. You put forth the 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 energy to produce it, and you guys completed the project.
Yeah, if anything else is never accomplished in life, that's one accomplishment I made.
So you started the band in '77. Is that right?
Somewhere around there. We didn't really form a band. We didn't call it a band or anything because it was just me and my brother, and we were doing recording lots of multiple tracks and all of that, and we were just concentrating on making the music.
What was it that made you decide to go back into the Navy?
Oh, I got out for a year and a half. I figured that I was going to do 20 years and retire.
So you were this is your second tour. Talk about the friend of yours that you had come in contact with that was probably the main reason why you had this experience. How did you meet him, and how did that friendship start to form?
Well, I'm from Kankakee, Illinois, 60 miles straight south of Chicago. This kid's name is Jeff Reich. Jeff Reich. He grew up in Gary, Indiana, which is on the south shore of Lake Michigan, which is about 20 miles from Chicago and about 50 miles from Kankakee. I joined my ship in the Philippines. It took 28 hours to get to my ship from Kankakee once I got started on the trip. And most of it was flying. And so we're talking over a day. We're talking over a day journey, over a 24-hour period. All right. That's how long it took. That's how far away it was. And he was the first person I met on the ship. And so we started talking, and we became pretty good, fast friends. And he felt like he was, hey, I'm from Kankakee, you're from Gary. We're like 12,000 miles away from anywhere neither one of us lives. So, you're like a homeboy, You're right out of my neighborhood as far as I can see it.
I get that, yeah. That would be a solid connection with somebody from back home, more or less.
All right. So we had a firm bond, which we established early on. And we spent a lot of time together. We'd go on liberty together, whatever port we went to. He was, there was a small clique of us, about 6 or 7 of us that hung out all together all the time. And we always went everywhere together and hung out together and stuff. And he was one of them. All right. He had been to my house. He had met my wife. He'd been there for supper and watched TV and all kinds of things like that. And I'm talking about my house in San Diego once my ship came back from overseas. All right. My wife and I were living there. And he was one of my friends that would come over. And not too many people would come over to my house. But he was one who came over on a regular basis. All right. So, he was well known, well received. And, he acted pretty normal for the most part. But every now and then he did act occasionally what I would call a quirk or, anomalous. Yeah, just a little bit different. Not that much different, but things that, raise questions in my eyebrow about certain things.
Can you describe one of those quirks?
Well, okay. He he ate his French fries with mayonnaise. All right.
That's the way they eat them in France, though.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've never ate. I
Yeah,
never ate.
that's normal.
Well,
That's normal
but
in France.
I never had French fries with mayonnaise. I always had it with ketchup. That's what I grew up
Sure,
on.
me too. I wouldn't put mayonnaise on it to save my life, but that is the way that people do eat it in France. It's a normal thing. Go. Okay, continue.
Well, he's not from France though. So my point is, I thought that was an unusual quirk. All right, it's not what's normal. If you understand what I mean by that. Whenever we walk around in these towns, and there'd be people making food and selling it on the street. And I remember one time he's like, "Oh, look, fish heads," and he got himself a great big bowl of fish heads. And all this is they're the heads of fish. That's all it is. The head. There's no other parts.
That's a little odd. Was it a soup? Fish head soup?
Yeah, and he was loving it. He ate like 3 bowls of it, and I wanted to throw up. Watching them eat these big, eyeballs and all. I wanted to throw up.
Yeah, that doesn't sound tasty at all. So, okay, so he had a quirky way of eating. Was there anything else that stood out about him that you thought was odd?
Well, he'd make these weird ass comments that didn't make sense about different situations that would show up and stuff. And he'd sit there and he'd say something so far out of left field, it was out of the ballpark. And it was like, and I would just look at him with a question mark in my mind, going, "Where the hell you come up with that at? What's that got?" It doesn't make sense at all. And there was a few times when things like that happened, and I never did understand it, and I never did get to understand it. And to me that made him a little bit different. The way that he would react to certain situations, so totally different than what a normal human being would react.
I mean, would you call him your best friend at that time?
Yes, close to it. If not my best friend, one of my top best friends at the time. I mean, I never stopped hanging out with him because of that. I found him to be a unique individual, and we're all unique in our own way. I just couldn't understand where his thinking was coming at for some of the things the way that he would react. All right, because it's totally unexpected.
After you've known him for some time, he shares a strange and kind of scary, unbelievable story.
You got to remember this. This was back in 1982. We lived in a different time frame. The world wasn't the way it is today. You didn't talk about flying stuff, especially if you were in the military, all right? Unless you wanted to get evaluated by a psychologist.
How long had you known him before he started talking about UFOs?
About 3.5 years.
And he had never mentioned it before then?
Never. And he came down to my space. Now, see, here's what he did not know. I did a book report in high school on UFOs. It took me 6 months. I researched it very graphically. I got it very detailed into it because it was half my grade for my English class. So, I did a book report on it. It didn't matter to me. I mean, I knew, I had knowledge of it. But he starts talking about having an abduction experience himself. That's a totally different subject.
And this was kind of out of the blue when he brought it up?
Yes.
How did that conversation start? Do you remember?
I'm down in my space and I'm doing paperwork. So I'm down there. It's on a Sunday night. It's around 7 o'clock at night. And he comes down. He used to come down all the time and talk to me while I was working in the office. So that was nothing unusual there. The thing that made this unusual was what the subject became. The reality of the fact that this guy is telling me about an abduction experience that he had had. He knew by telling me this, I could send him to the psychiatrist. He was taking a chance by doing that. Okay, so he starts talking about all of this stuff that happened in his past, and that he's been abducted since he was 8 years of age. All right, so now I know him, and he's about Oh, he's about 23 by this time. All right, because I've known him almost 4 years. So, I figured he's at least 18. He'd be 22. In other words, a long time since he was 8. And that he was still having these contacts. And they would come and get him. And they would take him away. And then he would talk about different places that he went to. And it sounds like Star Trek. All right? And of course, I'm not buying any of it because, in 1982, look how advanced we were. We had time travel. We were going everywhere, because we'd gone to the moon and never gone back. So, I am kind of taking it all with a grain of sand. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever.
So what? Let me back you up just a second. You said in the 1980s we had time travel?
No, we didn't. But I'm talking now. He's talking time travel. He's talking about going to other planets. He's talking about going to other galaxies. Stuff I couldn't really comprehend. But too far to believe. You understand what I mean by that?
So, what was your reaction to it when he told you this? Did you say anything to him?
Oh yeah, I was asking him all kinds of questions. I was like, really? Well, how did you get there? Oh, we went on this whatever craft. Blah 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 blah. All right. Out of everything that he told me, and this is in almost 3 hours of conversation, the only real thing I remember was that on one of the planets that he went to, he said the sunflowers grow to be 50 feet tall, with the sunflower dish itself being roughly 30 feet in diameter. And he said that the sunflower seeds, and these are dark red sunflowers with dark red and orange leaves, and the sunflowers themselves being red, and that the sunflower seeds were about the size of a thumb. And I was just trying to imagine in my mind how many sunflower seeds there are on one of them sunflowers. Now, 30 foot in diameter, that's 10, 20,000 seeds on that thing.
Well, if the seed was the size of your hand,
your thumb.
Oh, the seed was the size of your thumb, is what he said?
Yes. I was trying to do the math on that, and I was thinking that was pretty unique. And that's the only thing out of all the strange and unbelievable things that he said that I remember, because I kind of really believed that was possible. That he was on a planet with dark red sunflowers that grew 50 feet tall.
What were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking that it was an incredible story that he was telling me. And that...
Did you think he was lying?
No, I didn't. I really believe that he believed what he was telling me. But I didn't jump to conclusions. I didn't label this guy as nuts or anything. I just thought it was unusual and, intriguing. And, of course, I wanted to learn more.
For sure.
So,
but did you during the time you were talking with him? I'm sorry for breaking the flow of your.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Did you ever ask him why he was telling you this?
No. No, I didn't.
Okay. Continue, please.
All right. But I also knew, look, I'm going to have to send this guy to an eval. I knew that. All right? I was formulating that plan while I was discussing this with him. You understand?
Yeah, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, well, it kind of made me feel weird. But, look, I'm not playing favorites. I'm only doing my job. and I tried to be one of the best corpsmen that there was. And so I was doing what I felt was my responsibility. All right, and I had a few days to formulate it because we're out at sea. Who knows when we're going to get to port again, and who knows if I can even send him to a psychiatrist at the next port we go to. So that's not like a major thing that I had to worry about. You understand? I had time to formulate and discuss things with him, and so I could write up a good evaluation when I sent him.
Yeah, yeah, and you better have your facts in a row, because when you submit that report, somebody's going to look at you kind of weird and think if you're making it up, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You know, there's a stigma to that.
Did how long had it been, or did he mention how long it had been since the last time he had been abducted?
Yes, I asked him. He told me it had been about a month. But I guess it happened as often as he wants it to. You know, all he's got to do is think about them, and they'll come for him. You know, the thought out there, and there he is. He's connected with it. Okay, so now this is on a Sunday night. You know, our conversation lasted probably for about 9:30. And that's when I was knocking off to go to bed. And so, well, I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Why? Because I had a lot of shit running through my mind, dealing with this guy and dealing with what I just been told, trying to piece it all together. And like I said, I'm going to have to write him up in an eval, and how do I even begin? So I didn't see him at all on Monday. None at all, in the whole 24 hours. And on Tuesday, I didn't see him at all until about 7 o'clock at night when I was down in my space again working, and he came back down to see me on Tuesday. Now, here's where everything gets thrown out the window. So on Tuesday, he comes down, says, "Hey, you remember the conversation we had the other night?" And I go, "Yeah, that's all I've been thinking about." And he goes, "Well, my friends, they came and got me." And I'm like, "Oh, well, that's nice. Where'd you go?" So I went to your house in Kankakee. Now, we're on the other side of the road at this time. You know, we're near Korea, Japan, Singapore, somewhere in that time frame. All right? More than 24 hours away. All right? By jet. Okay? And these are my friends. They came and got me. Oh, that's nice. Where'd you go? Well, I went to your house. Well, it's only 7 o'clock at night. Ain't no fucking way he could have gone to my house and be back by now. No way. Okay? And I'm like, well, that's interesting. What'd you see? And then when he starts describing the things that he saw, I started getting upset. And the more he described, the more upset I was getting. And the reason being was, if he just got back 15 minutes ago, the things he's talking about wasn't what you would have experienced had you gone to my house that day. All right? Because I asked him to describe the things he was describing. You know, what his experience was when he got to my house. First thing he described was a 1966 Ford Galaxy 500. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that, except this is in May of 1982. We traded the Galaxy 500 in 1970 for a Plymouth 33. And in 1973, my dad traded that in for, in other words, he's talking 4 or 5 cars ago. That's not the car that's out in front of my house today. And he had the details so perfect on the car. All right? And that was the first thing. And then the second thing was, he started describing our kitchen, the way it looked before it got remodeled in 1968. Yeah, he just got back 15 minutes ago. And I knew everything he told me was a God's honest truth. All right? And I knew that he was describing the kitchen from 1967. All right? See, I'm not thinking time travel. But he did. He traveled back in time. He described furniture that we sold at a yard sale in 1970. He described things that we'd written on our wall in our bedroom, all right, our parents gave us these Dago markers, and we got to mark the walls when we were kids. All right. Well, we covered all that up with wood paneling in 1970. Yet he's describing everything under the wood paneling. And he just got back from my house, and you go in my bedroom, you would have seen the wood paneling. You wouldn't have seen any of the stuff written on the walls. Yet that's what he's describing. Just coming back 15 minutes ago. You know, so the answer he was giving me brought up a lot of questions because I'm trying to figure out how he got all this information. How did he know it? How could he know it? Why would he even bring it up?
Did you come to any conclusions in your own mind? Like, how did he was he a spook? Did he, like, do some background on you?
He worked in the ship's office. And they're the ones who had my records. All right? So he had my records. All right? But I know I didn't have any pictures of any of this. I certainly wasn't talking about stuff so far ancient history, and that's the way I looked at it. You know, it had no bearing on what was going on in the day. Okay? All right? You know, our lives have changed a little bit. You know, our family had matured and all that. And, you know, I just couldn't believe that he was bringing all of this stuff up from so far in the past. Yet every detail he gave me was absolutely true. And I knew it. And I was trying to figure out how he knew it. I thought maybe the CIA gave him pictures or something. I had no idea. Well, I didn't know what to think. I just know that I had to believe it because I heard it. Okay? But this is what he's describing that he saw in the hour that he was gone. You know, the very same day. And I was trying to figure out how, because like I said, I wasn't thinking time travel. Of course, E.T. has it. You and I don't. And in 1982, we know time travel is a wide thing. So finally, I'm getting more and more upset. And the more I'm asking him, the less he's telling me. So I finally told him, I says, okay, look, motherfucker, what you're telling me is the truth. I want to meet your little green friend. Got it? I want to meet your little green friend. And he goes, Kevin, it's not up to me. It's totally up to them. He goes, I'll tell them. And if they want to, then they will. All right? If they want you to meet them, then they'll let you meet them. He goes, if they don't, you will never know about it. Period. But it's totally up to them. And I looked him right in the eye, and I got real close to him, and I poked him in the chest, and I said, make it fucking happen. That's exactly the way that conversation ended. And he says, well, I'll talk to him. I can't promise you anything. And he goes, and I'll let you know. And I said, you do it. I said, make it happen. Okay, so now I'm starting to believe that he's got extraterrestrial friends.
Wait, sorry, that one didn't come out clear. Can you say that?
Now I am starting to believe he does have actual extraterrestrial friends. Okay?
Got it.
And at that point, I decided I wanted to meet him. What he's telling me is true. I want to meet him. All right, so now...
I would too.
Yeah, well, and this is the way this whole thing went down. Now, this is on Tuesday. Okay? Now, I didn't see him at all on Wednesday. And Thursday night, I'm standing in line at Chow Hall at around 5:15, right after it opened. And I'm at the front of the line. Being the corpsman, I got head of the line privileges because I'm always on call. So I would get in and out as soon as I could, just in case an emergency came up. And so I was at the head of the line. And he walks back in at the end of the line, maybe about 30 people behind, 30, 35 people behind me at the end of the line. And he sees me and he starts yelling, Kammann! Kammann! And I look over at him, and he's got this Cheshire cat grin on his face, and gives me 2 thumbs up, and he says, "You're there, man! You're there!" and a couple of guys at the front of the chow line standing next to me are like, "Where, Kammann? Where are you at?" I go, "I'm right here, getting ready to eat." Yeah, just like you. All right? I didn't know what to say. I certainly wasn't going to say, "When I'm there, I'm going to meet E.T." All right? So, you understand what I mean? So, I blew that off real quick. And he gave me 2 big thumbs up. So then I went in, I sat down, and I waited for him, and he came over and he sat down next to me. And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You can meet him." I go, "Well, that's good. When?" "I don't know." "Where?" "I don't know." "What?" "He's not telling me nothing." Well, I got nothing to tell you. "What do you mean? You just told me I can meet him." Me, I'm doing things the way us humans do it. Trying to think of a time, place, you know, meal, whatever. Like we normally do when we meet people. So now this is on Thursday night. All right. So then the next day is Friday. I just got done eating, and it's roughly right around 11:30 in the morning. All right. It wasn't straight up noon, but it was close to being straight up noon. And I'm down in my compartment, and he and I lived in the same compartment. We shared the same compartment. So, and that's another way we knew each other all these years because we lived in the same compartment on the ship. Anyway, he comes down in the compartment and he goes, "They're here." I go, "Oh, really? Where?" "I don't see them." He goes, "You got to go up on the main deck." "Yeah, okay." So I have to go upstairs 1 level to get out onto the main deck. And the main deck is what's open out to the ocean. And so I walked out. We have this thing called a wind tunnel. And I walked so far along that, and then I'm out on the main deck. And I see it. Because it's only, all right, now I'm trying to draw a picture in your mind, all right, on the way this was. Imagine a circle with 0 being straight dead in center in front of you. Got it?
Got it. Yes.
All right. And in the military, we go by angles. So you got 90, 180, 270, and then 0 again. All right. So I just divided the ship off in a 90-degree angle. Got it?
Got it.
This craft was at approximately angle 210 to 230 degrees. So it'd be just like around the 8 o'clock position.
Got it.
On the clock. Roughly 7 to 8 miles away. And this object was roughly 7 to 8 miles in the air. And this object was an 8-pointed star, shimmering and shining like every color of the rainbow. The most gorgeous thing I've ever seen in my life. And it was approximately 3 to 3.5 miles wide to 2 to 2.5 miles tall. The top half of the top spire was roughly 1.5 to 1 3/4 mile tall, and the bottom spire was only roughly 3/4 of a mile to a mile long. In other words, the shorter spire at the bottom was not as long as the one at the top, but the one from the left to the right were the same equal distance. And it was an 8-pointed star. And my first thought was the Star of Bethlehem.
Interesting. Have you ever tried to draw the object?
I'm not an artist.
Have you ever talked to an artist to try to get an artist rendering?
Yes, and I haven't been able to find one that'll do it.
Okay.
Pretty pathetic, but that's the truth. So then I see this object, and it's huge. I mean, beyond huge. And it's absolutely gorgeous. The most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's shimmering, and it's not making a sound. And it's perfectly still. Well, there's two guys that are having a conversation right in front of me. One is standing to my right, and the other one is standing in front of me. And I grabbed the guy on my right by the shoulders. And I got a death grip on him, and I'm shaking the living fuck out of him. I mean, I am vigorously shaking him and yelling his name, trying to get his attention, because I want him to see this object. Nothing else I wanted to witness. No response. Not a response. And the guy that's talking to him, who's basically looking right at me, he doesn't say anything to him like, hey, Doc's trying to get your attention or anything. He just keeps talking to him like, I'm not there.
Weird. Okay. Where was Jeff at this time?
He was down in the compartment. He didn't come upstairs with me.
Do you know why he didn't come up?
Not at the time, because I'm like, what the fuck? It's there. And at this time, I'd already changed my mind. I did not want to meet them no more. Just seeing their craft was enough for me. Okay? As far as I was concerned, I was done and over with it. Yeah. Surprise, blink. Now all of a sudden, I'm on their ship, looking down and watching my ship sail away.
But before you get to that point, and when you're interacting with these two friends of yours, or people that were on the ship, what is going through your mind? Like, you're trying to get some reaction from them, and they're just like, you're not even there. What was going through your mind at that time?
Well, my mind was still trying to get their attention. All right, I'm just trying to figure out why they're not answering me. But this all happened so quick, and it was like blink. And now I'm on their craft. All right, and I'm watching my ship sail away. And I'm no longer on my ship, not with my present thoughts and all of that. I'm definitely on their ship. Yeah, and it was in a microsecond. I mean, it's just like I'm talking to you, and in the middle of a sentence, I finish it up in another room without missing a beat. I mean, it was that fast. And I looked around, and I seen that I was on their craft. And I noticed that when I looked out towards the edge of the wall, I could see through it. So no matter wherever I looked, I was looking outside. Yet it was all solid on the inside. That's one thing I noticed. I saw my ship falling away. And my first thought was, my God, this can't be happening. And as soon as I thought that, a voice came in my head and said, yes, it is. It's what you wanted. Well, to be honest with you, it's not exactly what I wanted. You know? I mean, this isn't what I want. It's not, put it this way, it's not what I expected. Okay? And so, and then my second thought was, my God, I'm AWOL. Because that was the first time in 8 years in the Navy that I was not at my assigned position at the time I was supposed to be. First time ever. And this is a reassuring thought. Think about this. Another voice came in my head and said, but they don't even know you're gone. Now, isn't that nice and reassuring? They don't even know I'm gone on my ship. I know I'm gone, I'm not on my ship. I'm not sure where I'm at. Oh, I mean, I knew I was on the craft, but it's like, what's going to happen next? Now, I don't remember what my third thought was, but a third voice came in my head. And then they started answering my question, and none of them spoke out of turn. And they sounded like, they sounded like a unanimated voice, like a computer voice, speaking in a monotone, no real expression one way or the other, and the things they were saying, they could be talking about how nice the weather is, and then about the mass murder that happened, and there was no emotion between the two. If you understand what I mean by that. And so they started answering my question. Well, now at the same time, we kind of came in down alongside the side of my ship. And we sailed right down the side of my ship out there in the ocean. And this is probably approximately 3 to 5 seconds now that after I've been on board. And they've already answered the first question. And we get to the point on my ship where I was jumping up and down and pointing at their ship, and there I am, jumping up and down, pointing at their ship. And now I'm in 2 places at once. That's a thought going through my mind. How the fuck can I be in 2 places at once? Yet there I've seen it. That was a mind-blowing experience. I certainly wasn't expecting to see me on the ship, especially since I was on their ship. So then we went out past the ship, and I'm watching it sail back behind us, and all of a sudden blink. And now we're over an intersection. All right? And it's probably right around noon. And I'm looking down on top of these buildings. And I'm not familiar with them because I'm not, turns out it was a major intersection in town. It took me a few seconds to realize where I was at because I've been through that intersection lots of times, but I've never seen the tops of the buildings, the roofs. I've always been down at ground level, looking at it from a different perspective. So it took me a couple of seconds to orient where I was at. And I figured that we were at around the 5th floor of the bank building where my dad worked at. Now I looked over at the bank building where my dad worked at, and this is not even 10 seconds. Not even 10 seconds before I was on my ship. Now I'm down in Kankakee. Okay? I'd known at that second, when I realized where I was at and what time it was, I knew that I had time traveled. That I didn't know. Because I know that it was right around noon where I was at, which meant it was around midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning back home in Kankakee. Yet I was there live, like right around noon. So I knew that I had to go into the past or I had to go into the future. I didn't know which way it was, but I had known right then and there I had just time traveled. And this is like in the first 15 seconds being in my phone. Okay? I look over at the bank building, and not only can I see it, I can see through it. I can see the marble. I can see through the marble. This is the outside structure of the bank. I can see the steel I-frames. I can see the concrete. I can see the wires. And I can see all the way through it. And I was able to do this through every single room on the floor that I was looking. All the way back to my dad's office. My dad was sitting behind the desk. A man comes in. My dad stands up. They shake hands. They both sit down. blink. Now I'm gone over Grace Baptist Academy. And so this whole scenario lasted about 10 to 15 seconds at the bank. And number one, I didn't ask to go and see my dad. And number two, I was surprised they knew where my dad worked. I was wondering how much information they had about my mom and dad. If they had that much about me, that they knew where to take me. And this wasn't pre-thought or any of that. This is what they were giving to me at the time. And I remember looking over at the wall and seeing the water pipes running through the wall that went to the water fountain. And I could see the water running through the pipes. I could see the electrical conduits in the walls and through them, both at the same time. You know, I mean, that's hard to fathom. How can you see something and see through it, both at the same time? Yet both just as realistic and, you know, abject as positive. You know, it's like, I wasn't expecting that. And then we get over to where my mom taught. She taught at a Grace Christian Baptist Church Academy Christian School. And her class was on the first floor. And I remember looking through the roof, and I was looking into the second floor classroom. And all the students were sitting at their desks on the second floor classroom, and I could see their desks. And I could see through their desks. And I remember thinking I could be the desk police. I could walk around and just point to a desk. You need to clean that out. You know, or Mary Jane, your desk looks perfect. Without even looking at it. You know, just looking through it. You know, I was thinking like a super cop or something, you know, superpowers. You know, man, I'm not expecting none of this. Because I don't have that. I don't have that ability. You know, I'm normal like you.
One other thing that is really interesting to me is that you're seeing it. Well, the way you're describing it is that you're seeing it as if you were only a few feet away from the building. But this ship is a massive 3-mile by 2.5-mile ship. So how could you get that close to this building and to be able to see into all these little nooks and crannies of that building?
Delusional illusion. No, the reason I say that is just because it appeared to be as big as it was it really? I mean, we weren't dragging in the water when we went down the side of my ship. And the water line is about 30 feet of the surface of the water, right? So I knew that what I was in was not as big as what it appeared to be.
Got it.
That's why I say that. And I'll get into more detail about that later on in our discussion. See, so yes, it was like I could reach out and touch the desk. You know, we were right above it, but you know, and I know that, you know, there's no way I would have even been able to see it from being 2 miles away from it. You know, so but I'm just explaining to you exactly the way this went down. All right, and I was right there on top of all that. So I knew then that what I'd seen was not what I was experiencing.
Right. So, and like you said, you know, when you first passed by the ship and you saw yourself and you were in two places at one time, it's like your reality was being manipulated. You know, your consciousness was being shown things that it's hard to comprehend because you've never experienced these things before.
Well, exactly. Right? Exactly. You know, and the things that I've said, they're kind of hard to believe. You know, I mean, the reality is that's what I experienced, and this is the way my situation went down. And then, so then after that, it's cold, it's dark, it's gray. I see a bunch of craters everywhere. And I'm thinking that we're out in some desert somewhere at a bombing range. And I was familiar with being around them, being in the military. So I'd flown over a few. And they look like the surface of the moon. Bomb craters everywhere, you know. And they look like the craters on the moon. And so we're going along, and I'm trying to figure out what bombing range we're over. And then we came up to a ridge of mountains, and we went up over the top of the mountains, and there's earth laid out in front of us, you know, about the size of a tennis ball. And that's when I squeezed my asshole as tight as I could, reached over with my left hand, and pinched the back of my right hand until it bled. I made sure I got it to bleed, so I would have that scar. That's when I did that. And I hadn't been with these bastards 30 seconds yet. They took me to the dark side of the moon. Pink Floyd sang about it. I got to experience it. And I wasn't expecting it. I didn't ask them to take me there. Now, in every one of these situations, there was never one moment where I felt that I was moving. It's not like I'm sitting in the car and you can feel when you're traveling. It wasn't like that. It was like blink, now I'm here. Blink, now I'm there. Blink, now I'm here. And that's when I kind of like didn't know what to expect next. I really didn't. As you can tell, this thing is just getting started.
Were you continuing to ask them questions? Or was this
No.
stuff happening too fast for you to even
Yes.
comprehend what was really happening?
Yeah. Yes.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It was while I was trying to comprehend everything that was going on. I wasn't thinking about asking them questions. I was trying to figure it out for myself. You know, place myself back in reality. And what you got to understand is, see, I'd already entered into a different dimension once they beamed me aboard their ship.
That one's a little bit hard for me to grasp because I don't really understand outside of the four dimensions. The three dimensions in our world and time is the fourth dimension. So if you're in another dimension, I'm struggling wrapping my head around that one.
I'm now in the twilight. I'm now in the twilight zone.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and look, the everything that you and I know as far as our four dimensions and reality and all that, throw it out the window when it comes to that. When I'm inside there. All right. I asked them where they were from. Instantly, I'm standing in a 3D star chart of the universe. And off to my right is our solar system. All right. And it looks just like our solar system that you grew up with in high school. You know, with all the different planets and stuff. Only there's no gears attached to any of them. They're all free form. They're all moving. And their solar system took up about 8 to 10 feet of space off to my right. But they deliberately set me up to the left of it so I'd know exactly where I was in relation to our solar system. And then the room I'm in expanded. Just grew outward 5, 6, 700 feet, 800 feet. I have no idea. In every direction around me. And all of this is filled in with space, with planets and galaxies and all of that. And they said, you see the red light at the far end? And I would say it was roughly at the far end away from where I was at, roughly 800 or 900 feet away. Okay? And like I said, our solar system only took up about 8 feet of space. So there's a lot of space between our solar system and where they are from. Mm-hmm. And they told me the name of their planet, but I couldn't begin to pronounce it. It sounds something like,
okay.
Yeah, it sounds like some kind of noise a bug would make. All right? Seriously. And I mean, your guess is as good as mine as to what it actually is. But they said they were roughly 6 light years away from us, and that they can travel to our planet from theirs in 3.5 months.
Really? So it actually takes them. It takes them time. They don't blink from their system to ours. Huh?
Oh, we're talking 6 light years.
Okay. I have a question about the things that you were seeing. Did it ever occur to you that maybe the inside of this craft was not actually moving to different locations, but you were being shown like a holographic image?
Well, I'm getting ready to get to that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So right after I asked them where they were from, and they showed me, they start showing me things. Showing me things of the future, showing me things of the past, and some of the things of the present. And here's exactly what they told me. Some of what you see has already been. Some of what you see has yet to be. Destiny will be fulfilled. And they showed me about, I don't know, somewhere around 30 minutes worth of different interesting things. It is not a happy day at Disneyland. Everything they were showing me was death and destruction on a major scale. Like, for instance, a volcano. Well, not just like Mount St. Helens. We're talking more like Yellowstone caldera. You know, not just a major volcano, a major volcano.
Got it.
I got to see parts of a war. Now, I couldn't tell you what war. I couldn't tell you where or when. But I've seen a lot of shit getting blown up and a lot of people getting killed. Earthquakes. I remember we were like farmland. And we were out in the country out there. And, you know, I'm up about 5 or 6 miles high, looking out over the land. And you can see what, 50, 60, 150 miles? You know, it's like looking out over an airplane. How far can you see on a clear day? A big, large distance. And I'm sitting there, and it looks like a beautiful day out, and all of a sudden, the ground starts crumbling right in front of me. And then it starts dropping. Except to the right, it starts rising. So the ground in front of me is crumbling and dropping down into nothing. But the ground to the right, you know, I don't know, maybe a mile, 2 miles off to the right, it's rising up. And it's rising up tall, very tall, 200, 300, 400 feet. And then everything that crumbled in front of me, wow, water gushes in. They got a new West Coast, just like that. And I'm trying to think of how many people just died in that scenario. Just quickly died, you know? And I don't know if this is in California or where it was at, you know? And let's see. I've forgotten a lot of them over the years. I try not to think about. I try not to think about traumatic events. All right, so I've kind of like forgotten some of them, but every one of them was a calamity, a major calamity.
And you saw roughly about 30 minutes of this, almost
Yeah,
like a movie, watching a movie of these things happening.
yes, and they were all holograms. I felt like I was there witnessing it live as it occurred. And that's what I felt was going on. All right? And they would repeat about every 3 to 4 minutes. They would repeat, some of what you see has already been. Some of what you see has yet to be. Destiny will be fulfilled.
Wow.
The very last thing, this is important. The very last thing that I saw during all of this was me riding a Harley Davidson motorcycle, getting hit broadside by a car, and laying on the ground next to it, not moving. And I thought I'd seen how I died. And so for 21 years, I felt that I knew how I was going to die. And that was in a motorcycle accident, riding a Harley Davidson. All right, but see, it wasn't going to be just a special. It was going to be a 100th anniversary Harley Davidson, a 2003 Harley Davidson Sportster. Okay? That's what I was riding. So, that was the very last thing they showed me, was me being hit and killed on a motorcycle.
Man, I mean, all the other stuff, you can look at that and be a little bit objective about it, not really concern yourself too much. But you see yourself dying or being splayed out on the sidewalk or the pavement from getting hit by a car while you ride a motorcycle. That's hits home pretty close.
Surprise!
Yeah.
I'm not expecting this. Thanks, E.T. And that was the last thing. And then my normal vision came back, and I was inside the craft again.
So, I have a couple questions about that movie experience. I don't know if that's what you want to call it, but are you done? Are you done with that part of the experience? So I can kind of drill down on that a little bit.
Yeah, that like I said, I can't remember a lot of them. All right, I told you about seeing wars, the volcano, and everything that I'm seeing is 15, 20, 25, 30 seconds long. Just enough for me to realize what I'm looking at, and now I'm looking at something different. All right, and I'm trying to deal with what I just saw as far as the calamity that's involved.
Right.
Right.
Were the scenes repeating themselves, or was it a new scene every?
It was a new scene.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was live or a hologram. To me, I experienced it. I thought it was live at the time.
Were your other senses detecting anything? Like, were you smelling anything, or could you taste? Like, if you're near a fire, you can smell smoke and you can taste. Okay. Could you hear anything?
No.
Okay. So the whole experience was visual.
Yes.
Okay. Did you remember having any thoughts?
No, because it was one calamity after another.
Okay.
And just, and they all got better. I mean, what I mean by better was more grand.
More what?
More grand.
Oh, I see.
The volcano was towards the end. It wasn't at the beginning.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
Started out small and built up to a crescendo, and then it ended in you meeting your demise.
Exactly.
I don't blame you for never wanting to ride a motorcycle again after that, man.
And then, I didn't want, I didn't know what to expect from all this. This isn't what I expected. This isn't my way of meeting E.T.
Right.
Okay? This isn't what I had in mind.
Got it. So
I'm totally under their control.
So basically you're given a visual record of the history of calamities starting and stopping at a point in time that you don't know anything about, really.
Right. I don't know when any of them were. I don't know how far in the past, how far in the future. I didn't sit there and try to accept, oh, this already happened. I didn't try to do any of that. I'm just experiencing the experience and responding to it at the moment.
Right. It seems to me that these ET are kind of dense about what we can comprehend, because you give us that information and don't tell us when it's going to happen. What good does it do? Right? The ETs, if the ETs are giving you all this information and not telling you when it's going to happen, what's the point?
No, they're just showing me things that are going to happen.
But they're not saying when or how to prevent it or anything like that. They're just showing you this is going to happen, and some of it has already happened, and destiny will be fulfilled. So, what's the point? Did you ever ask that question?
No.
Okay.
No, and you know why?
No.
It wouldn't do me any good if I knew.
Well, not the. So the question that I would want to know, not so much when is all this stuff going to happen, because it's too much information, but why are you showing me this stuff?
I've asked myself that millions of times.
Yeah.
I've tried to analyze it millions of times.
Yeah.
You know what conclusions I've come up with? I have no answers.
And see, that's the thing. Why? That's what I'm saying. That's why I think ET doesn't understand humans. If they're going to show us this information without any context, they obviously don't get how humans work. Do you follow me?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry I can't answer for ET, because I've asked myself the very same question. It doesn't make sense. However, and the last thing, I didn't need to see myself getting murdered.
Exactly. Yes. Why show you that? So again, I'm not being critical of you, the experience you had. It's an amazing experience. I just question what the motivation was. I question the motivation of the ETs and why they were showing you these things without any context. That's it. That's all. I guess I could put it this way. I'm empathizing with you because I did put myself in your shoes while I was hearing you retell that experience. And I was visualizing everything that you were telling me. So it was kind of like I was there, but I know it was probably way more.
That's the whole intention of my story. I'm trying to put the reader into my shoes.
Got it.
I want you to experience what I was experiencing while I was experiencing it.
And I was. Right? I'm a visual person, and I feel like I was experiencing that, right out of.
And I don't know why. All right, but at the end of the 30-minute thing, when my normal vision came back and stuff, I started asking them questions.
Okay.
I was asking them all kinds of questions. All right? Like, for instance, do you eat? Oh, yes, well, we don't eat the same way you do. Basically, they take their food in through osmosis. That's the way I determined what they were saying. They absorb it through their skin.
I guess because of your medical background, that would have been a logical question. But to me, I don't think I would have asked them what they, or if they can eat. But that's a logical question for somebody in the medical
Well,
field, I would think.
I asked them if they were going to eat me.
Good question.
Okay, I did ask them
Good
that.
question. And obviously their answer was no. But did they laugh at you?
Yeah, actually they did. They kind of said, "Oh, you watch too many horror movies." Well, see, here's the thing. I never watched that many horror movies. I worked as a paramedic. I've seen enough horror in real life. I didn't need to go to the movies to see any. Working on the ambulance crew and stuff, I've seen a lot of gross and disgusting things. I described some of them to you earlier, you know, and so I never really went and watched horror movies. So I kind of thought that was kind of dumb. Also, I'm glad that I had the experiences that I did because it helped me to cope with this experience a lot better. All right, seeing all the traumatic things that were going on and stuff, a lot of people would freak out, and I just kind of like, oh, what's next? You know, because I had seen enough gross and disgusting things. I wasn't surprised at the things I was being shown. I didn't like it all, but that's beside the point.
Have you seen? Is there anything that you saw during that hologram that you have realized has come to pass?
No,
Interesting.
no. Of all the things that I've seen, I haven't seen anything that resembles anything that I saw or any references to any major calamities that would be associated with what I saw. And trust me, I'm watching every day.
I understand. So you're asking them questions, they're answering your questions, and which is pretty cool actually. The fact that they're taking your questions and giving you answers to it.
Oh, and they're speaking in English. And they speak, here's what they told me. They speak every single language on this planet fluently, including languages that have been dead for thousands of years. Every single one.
Now,
Okay?
were they speaking out of their mouth or was it like projected into your brain?
Mental telepathy.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And they all took turns answering the questions. They didn't speak out of turn. They didn't, one of them didn't go and answer two questions in a row. It was your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn to answer my questions.
Got it.
Right?
Was there three of them or more?
Well, I ascertained by the three voices that it was only three.
Oh, so you could not see them?
Oh, I hadn't seen them yet.
I
No.
see. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
No. Have you noticed I haven't described them or anything yet? We're not at that point in my story.
Trying not to presume anything. I just ask questions as they come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not at that point in my story yet. Now, now, at this time, I've been with them roughly about a half an hour, 35 minutes. All right. And then I got around to what they look like. Well, I told my friend, I want to meet your little green friend. So I asked him, I said, what do you look like? And the first response was, we're not little and we're not green. I couldn't think of a bigger understatement to anything in my life. I was standing in the room and I had my back against the wall. And they said, go to the left and you come to a hallway. I walk down to the end of the hallway and walk up into the room at the end of the hallway. And so I made my way to the left. And the hallway was about maybe 20 feet wide about 25 to 30 feet tall and about 75 to 80 feet long. And so I started walking down the hallway. And I got about, maybe 10 or 15 feet. And I noticed there was a room to my left with an open doorway. So I went over there and I stood in the doorway and I looked inside the room. And I'm seeing all this old equipment. I would say old because it looked like it was old-fashioned to me. It looked something more like a 30 or 40s sci-fi thing. There was a long table with a console on the back of it that had maybe 2 or 3 rows of lights, about 6 or 8 lights each, toggle switches, and what I call oven dials. The kind of oven dial that sticks up off the stove, like if you have a gas range, you put your hand down on it and you turn that, the knob.
Yeah.
Like I call them oven dials. I don't know what else to call them. Raised area in the middle. You put your hand over it, and they're big and round. And so there's probably maybe about 6 or 8 of those, and a couple of cathode ray tubes, like radar screens. And they looked about the size of a radar screen. I don't know if you know how big a radar screen is.
Roughly like 12, 14 inches across.
Yeah, anywhere from that to about 22 inches.
Got it.
All right. So,
hey, again, a suggestion: if you ever have an opportunity, an artist rendering of this would be spectacular.
well, I got some rough drawn pictures.
I'm sorry?
I got some rough drawn pictures.
Okay.
That I drew, but they're not detailed, and they're not exact. They're a replica of what I've seen. All right, the way I remember it. But anyway, this old room, but on the console, the console was about as wide as the room, about 30 feet wide, with this up in the back. And there really wasn't a lot on the console. But there was a couple of places that had recessed areas that looked like a person's hand could fit in there. And I noticed there was like 3 of them on there. Now, while I'm standing there looking in the room, one of the entities walked out from the other end of the hallway. And I could tell by looking at him, he was a lot bigger than me. And as he got closer, the closer he got, the more I realized this isn't looking human. This looked like a praying mantis. Insectoid. And when he got close enough, he was about 12 to 15 feet tall. Now, it's really hard for me to describe 12 to 15 feet. You're talking 3 feet. That's a major amount of space. Well, yeah, but we're looking at an entity whose head is 1/3 the size of its body. In other words, the head is roughly 5 to 5.5 feet. Just the head.
Got it.
All right. Now, great big black as coal eyes, triangular shaped, eggshell white the whole rest of the body. No signs of any clothing. They look like they were totally naked. They had no nipples. They had no midline. They had no organs, or a penis, or a vagina, or an asshole. Totally smooth.
Did they have the body of a like a carapace, an exoskeleton, or
They
was
look
it?
like a praying mantis.
So their
They had
body
a,
was shaped like a praying mantis body.
yes,
Oh
yes.
wow. Okay.
Their head was a praying mantis head, and like I said, it was 1/3 the size of their body. All right, and their body was skinny and thin, right? Long legs, long arms. They
Did
had
they have more than 2 arms and 2 legs?
no,
Okay.
and they did have uh, each hand had 2 fingers and a thumb. That's the way I'll describe it.
Okay. Are you feeling any fear?
Oh, trepidation.
Okay.
Well, I mean, what do I expect? You know, is it going to reach out with one hand and grab me? I have no idea. So I continued on down the end of the room. And I went up the steps. There's about 6 or 7 steps. And I walked into a door. And when I went in to my left of me, I could see this like computer room with all of these computers and great big machines and all kinds of other stuff going off and working off to the left. In front of me was a table, kind of like a U-shaped table. All right. And I had a couple of little machines on it, little pieces of gear. I want to say, reminded me of um, the gear you'd have with a sound system, right? Components about that size. Now, I don't know what they were. I don't know if they were a computer or what. But there was 3 chairs lined up at this table. And there was the 2 other remaining ETs were in their chairs. Now, these chairs were form fitted. They were made specifically for these individuals. And I guess that's what they live in. When they're not out running around stuff. I guess they get back into these chairs and they get recharged. They get their meals, things like that. See,
Got it.
so
That's probably
um,
their rest area where they regenerate.
yeah, well, that's or where they work out of.
Okay.
I really don't know. All right, because that's not the way we live our life. But the the one I saw was smaller than the other one. The main one was in the middle, and he was roughly 3 feet taller than the other 2. His chair sat higher. He sat up higher. He looked bigger. All right. And the thing about him was, I could see his brain.
That's
right
weird.
there where the brain cavity is, it was like he had an amniotic sac covering it. And I could see his brain. And his brain looked exactly like yours or mine, only about 25 to 30 times bigger. And so I'm observing this, and I'm fascinated because I'd be in a corpsman. I want to know as much about the human body as possible. And here I was, getting to experience watching a brain like ours in activity. I could see little lights flickering over here, lighting up a little bit, and then other places, and lights would go on and off. It'd be like little clusters of light, like miniature small cities on a model train layout. All right. I was fascinated with it. I could see the blood flowing through the brain, and I remember thinking, gee, if I had a needle, I could stick a hole in this. All that fluid would leak out. What would happen to this? I remember thinking that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not expecting this. And I'm certainly not expecting a brain that looks like yours or mine.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was exactly like yours or mine, only like I said, being a much bigger scale size head, a much bigger brain. And I thought, man, there isn't a neurosurgeon on the face of the earth that wouldn't give their left arm to share my experience with me right now. Because I knew what I was seeing.
Yeah, the only way to see an active brain is to open up the cranium or to do an MRI.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
And this was still in the embryonic side. So it was still white as can be. Because your brain is white until it's exposed to the air. You hear me?
Yes, makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got to enjoy that for about 5 minutes. And they're still answering questions. And I can't remember what all the questions were because a lot of the questions brought up more questions. The answers they give me was, what? Well, how is that possible? Wow. You know? And they were talking to me about stuff that was over my head. You gotta realize this conversation was going on in 1982. And they're talking about basically interdimensional, extra-dimensional, the stuff that they're talking about nowadays.
And you were in your mid-20s at this time?
I was 28.
28, yeah. So
27. 27 or 28.
You didn't have a lot of, other than your experience as an ambulance technician or whatever that was, you had not been on Earth that long, so you didn't have, like, the knowledge you have accumulated to this day versus what you had accumulated up to your 28 is a vast difference in the amount of knowledge and experience that you've acquired.
Oh, yeah.
So you're a young, just kid, basically.
I was getting broke into the ET phenomenon.
Yeah.
Just getting broke into it. All right. I researched the subject for the last, since 1985.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I've done a lot of research. All right. And the UFO phenomenon continues. You know, there's a lot of complications to it. And there's a lot of subdivisions to it. And there's a lot of little sub-rivers and creeks and streams all in there. And it's all interconnected and it's all tied together. Now, they told me the crash at Roswell happened in 1947. All right? It was not their species. And they use the word species, not me, that was involved. But they are aware of the species that was involved. And that they were aware of them and four other species working together with our government and all the major governments of the world, building together of the new world order. They told me this in 1982. When I asked about God, I might as well have hit him in the balls with a sledgehammer, because that's the only time they were not, sounding like a computer voice, speaking in a monotone. Boy, they spoke with a lot of authority, a lot of hate, and a lot of discernment, and they were very totally adamant about not speaking about God.
That's very strange.
Yes, well, that tells me, because when I asked, is God real? They never told me he was not real. They never told me he did not exist. They never told me that. They did not acknowledge the fact that he existed. But they told me they were forbidden to discuss the subject.
That's interesting.
Now, God never forbid us from speaking about God. It says in the Bible, praise God. Proclaim glory to God. something that we should do on a daily basis. So that told me two things. One, God is real, very real. And if God is real, then the Bible is real. And if the Bible is real, Jesus is real. Number two, they were not on the side of God. That told me that right then and there. And that answers a lot of questions that weren't even asked. And it makes me wonder, how does the UFO phenomenon tie into the Bible? Yeah, I'm seeing through my experience that it does. Response?
I don't have a response. That's a pretty profound statement, and
mind blowing, isn't it?
Yeah. Did they do besides that reaction, that visceral, almost fearful reaction they had to hearing the word God? Did they do anything that was threatening?
Not then. So, and this, look, I wasn't expecting a response.
Got it.
Not at all. And I certainly wasn't expecting to hear the things that I heard. And I wasn't happy with what they were saying. But when they told me they were working on the New World Order, I knew that that was the one world government that they talk about in the book of Revelation that's going to be coming about on the face of the earth. And that Satan is going to be in control of that. And that's why I feel that they were on the side of Satan. Now, could I be wrong? Could they have been working on the side of God towards the New World Order in order to help make it happen? Yes, that's quite possible. But that's not the way I interpret it. Not from their reaction about God. They were so negative. It bothered me.
Understand. And you being there and being a first-hand witness of that reaction, your intuition is probably closer to accurate than what anybody listening to this is going to think.
Right. I agree.
So continue.
So, and I can't remember what all the subjects were that we talked about. But we talked about quite a bit. I got quite the education from them. I learned a lot. All right, so now we're all done. All right, I'm done looking at him in the office. I'm looking at the guy's brain, and he laid his chair back and reclined so that I could get a good look, and I could walk all the way around it and see and observe. And he was letting me do that. And then after about 5 minutes, the other one came back into the room, and all three of them got up and stood around me. And they asked me if I ever wanted to come back and be with them again. And I flat out said, fuck, no, never. All right? And one of them put their hand on my shoulder, and then I sat up in my bed, and I was fighting, swinging my arms, fighting. I was totally exhausted. I had been drained. Every ounce of my sweat and my body had soaked through my shirt, my T-shirt, my pants, my underwear. I was dripping in sweat. My clothes were. And I was totally exhausted because I had felt like I was fighting them off. All right? And the next day I got up, and when I went to the bathroom, I looked in the mirror, and, oh, looky, there's a bump in my forehead. Surprise! I got me an implant. Surprise! That was my experience.
Did you ever have that implant inspected by a medical?
It doesn't show up. You can put your finger on it. You can manipulate it around. You can see it sticking through the forehead. It does not show up on x-rays. All right? Now, let me get to the rest of this story.
Okay, continue.
We're far from done. We're far from done.
Okay.
Fast forward, 2003. The 100th anniversary Harleys are out. I'm not buying one. Guess why?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay. So, my sister-in-law, she hated me. She wouldn't piss on me if my guts were on fire. She wouldn't give me a dime if I asked for a nickel. All right? She hated me. She buys me a 100th anniversary 2003 Harley Davidson motorcycle. Now, I saw this bike 2 days before I got it. And what I was told, I was driving my brother's bike, who my brother and my sister-in-law both had 100th anniversary Harleys. They got them in 2002. Now, this is July of 2003, the end year, the end of the model year.
And it's also roughly 20 years since your experience, right?
21.
20, okay.
I went with my brother to the Harley Davidson dealer. Him and his wife had work done on their bikes. Well, he was going to drive his wife's back home, and I was going to drive his back home, roughly 10 miles from the dealership. All right? But I was just happy as shit that I'm going to get to drive a 100th anniversary Harley. I was happy about that, no problem. And we took the bikes back home to his house. This was on a Thursday evening. While we were waiting for the bikes to get ready, the manager of the store comes in and goes, "So, which one of these Harleys do you want?" And I go, "None." And he goes, "Oh." He goes, "Well, I got some nice ones over here." I go, "I see the one I want." As soon as I saw it, a chill ran down my spine. It was exactly the bike I was riding. And it was sitting in the dealership. And he goes, "Well, if you were going to get one, let's say you were going to get one." And I go, "Okay, out of shits and giggles, that's the one I'd want right there." And I pointed to it. And it's a 1200 2003 Harley Davidson Sportster. 100th anniversary model. I said, "That's it." All right. But I had no intention of getting it. So, I said, "Okay, I'll play along. Sure, that one there." Well, I didn't know it. But what had happened was my sister-in-law had asked them to find out what bike I wanted because she was going to buy it for me. And I didn't know.
That's weird.
Yeah. Well, God works in strange ways. Okay? Well, look, it was my sister-in-law who bought it. But I know that God was the only one that was able to plant that seed in her head. Because she hated me. And why would she turn around and buy me a Harley? Major factors in it.
Weren't you supposed to die on that Harley?
Oh, I'll get to that. I told you this gets better. Then I told you it gets worse. Well, the worst is coming up. So we get the bikes back home. Well, my brother calls me up on Friday night. "Look, Kevin, there was a problem with my wife's bike. I had to take it back to the dealership. So tomorrow I'm going to come and get you, and I'm going to take you back down and drop you off to pick up my wife's bike and take it back home." His wife was a nurse. She worked in an OR, and she had to work the next day, so she couldn't go and get it. My brother had to babysit their 1.5-year-old son, so he wasn't going to be able to get it. So I'm like, cool. I get to drive 2 Harleys in 1 week together. That's the way I'm looking at it. We get up there, all right? He drops me off. I go in. I tell him I'm ready with the bike. He said it'll be out in a couple of minutes. So I go outside and I'm smoking a cigarette. And while I'm smoking a cigarette, the guy comes out and he's got that same Harley that I wanted to buy. And I thought, wow, cool. Somebody bought that. That's good, you know. So I'm standing there waiting for a person to come out or whatever. So he turns it on and he does a couple of things and like, you know, messes around with it for a couple of minutes. And then he points at me and crooks his finger, like, come here. You know what I mean? And I look around, I go, oh, me? He said, yeah. So I go over there. And he goes, well, this is this, and this is that, and this is... I go, wait a minute. I go, what the fuck's going on here? He goes, well, I'm trying to explain to you everything about your bike. I go, this ain't my bike. He goes, yes, it is. It's your sister-in-law bought it. You could have knocked me over with a feather. I was just totally shocked. And here I am. I'm stuck as a Harley Davidson dealer, 15 miles from anywhere. And the only way out is to ride that bike. So I got on it and drove it home. I thought, and I remember, destiny will be fulfilled. I had the bike 15 days. I'm riding along on the street. I come to an intersection. A motherfucker makes a U-turn and it hits me broadside. Lays me out. I'm out cold for about 2.5 minutes. I wasn't dead. I was just knocked out. I wound up spending 3 weeks in the hospital. It took me 22 months for my bones to heal. I have 11 screws and a metal plate in my left lower leg, holding those 2 bones together. And it took 22 months for me to heal. It took me another year to get off the crutches. It took me 7 years, 1 month, and 19 days to be able to get back on that bike and drive it again. And when I drove it again, I drove it all the way from Kankakee, Illinois, out to San Diego, California, 2,250 miles away.
Let me go back to the time just after the abduction and when you came out of the experience. Did you talk to Jeff at all?
No. I never talked to Jeff after that. There were several times Jeff tried to get a hold of me, and I avoided him like the plague. Why? I didn't know what to expect that he was. I know that he had contact with them anytime he wanted to, and I was afraid he'd bring them back. And I didn't want to have nothing to do with them no more. So I avoided him for the whole 2 years that I was on the ship afterward.
Did you talk to anybody else about the experience?
Are you kidding?
No, I mean ever since even after you were out of the military.
Oh yeah, after I got out of the military, I started talking to all kinds of people. I started doing my research.
Okay.
And the more I researched, the more I learned. And the more I learned, the more I was able to connect some dots.
You left the subject alone more or less until you got out of the military.
That's right.
Is that right? Yeah. So, and then you say you got out. Did you get out in 85 or 86?
I can't remember.
Okay, no worries. But that's when you picked up the research and started really looking into the topic.
Well, yeah. That was when I was close to being at a library where I could go and look it up. I mean, in the military, I was on a ship, and I didn't go to any libraries. Well, I just wanted to avoid it altogether, being in the military, just for that stigma. You understand what I mean by that?
Totally. Yep, 100%. So you get out, you start looking into this, and you say you found some pretty revealing ideas or some interesting answers to some of the questions.
I started researching into Roswell. I
Okay,
was
got it.
familiar with it, but not that familiar with it. But since they told me that they knew about Roswell and that it was real, I wanted to learn everything I could about it. From what, what is, because I already know it's real. It doesn't matter what the government says, weather balloon my ass. You know, so because it's true.
Oh, you're not getting any argument from me. Not one shred of an argument from me.
So I looked into Roswell, and then along the way I discovered scoop marks. Seen lots of pictures of those and stuff. And then later on I got into Project Bluebeam. All right, are you familiar with that?
A little bit. Yes, I'm aware that it's a some kind of a holographic projection program that the U.S. military has worked on.
ET technology.
That part I was not aware of. No, I thought Project Bluebeam was developed strictly from human ingenuity, but that's an ET re-engineered or reverse engineered type of thing, huh?
Using ET crap, not necessarily crap, but technology in order to make it happen. See how it ties in? That's a dot that ties in. Okay, so now Project Bluebeam is related to that, and then I'm learning about witches and witchcraft and sorcery, and that's related to that.
Really?
Yes. All right. Everything is connected. Everything works on a vibrational frequency. Everything. Everything in the universe works on a vibrational frequency. Electromagnetic vibrational frequency. And everything operates at different frequencies. And different frequencies can activate other frequencies that can create mythological, not so much mythological, but mysterious, bizarre, unusual, paranormal. You understand?
Yeah.
All this phenomenon is created because of vibrational frequencies. And it all ties in. Everything is tied in. Here's my way of assessing the UFO phenomenon. It's an enigma. Wrapped in an enigma, which is wrapped in a question mark.
Okay, so it's something that we'll probably never figure out.
We will never know at all. There's too much to know. There's too much associated with it. Because not all your civilizations, and I'm talking about extra-dimensional ones as well, uses all the other things that other associations associate with. In other words, it's like quantum. It's quantum. It's quantum mechanics. It is. And and I'm not trying to sound flippant. I'm just trying to explain that there is so much that is involved with this that ties in with so many other different things that aren't even associated with this, but they're still associated with it. Here's what I think. I don't know if I was being deluded when I was with them. My research, I have come to the conclusion that the two smaller praying mantis beings, the ones that were 3 feet smaller than the main character, were maybe clones or AI. They weren't even real. But at the time I was associating with them, I thought that they were real. But my research has shown that they may be that far advanced that I could be interdealing with a robot and not even know it because I wouldn't know the difference. I didn't know that it would be. I thought it was the actual entity. All right, that's come into my mind in the last few years about what I was experiencing. That's why I say I still haven't got all the answers. I got answers to a lot of questions, but I got a lot more questions that haven't been answered. That's why I started researching. I want as much knowledge as I possibly can. And I have gained a lot of knowledge. And there's a lot of disinformation out there. And you can chase some rabbit holes for miles and then find out that it's all BS.
So, was there anything else that you learned throughout the period of time that you've researched this topic? I mean, from the time that you started in 85 or 86 until now?
Well, I just learned about different other programs that are going on. And the subterranean bases and the other underground bases, Area 51, things like that. Basically everything that's been written about the ET phenomenon, bases and extraterrestrials and anything and everything associated with them that you can find, I was researching. Now, I read a lot of articles that didn't make sense. I read a lot of articles that led me to other articles that led me down roads that I thought were the right answers, only to find out it was all turned out to be a myth to begin with. There's a lot of discernment to this. This field is so wide open. That's why you have so many researchers out there writing about it, and they're now all writing about the same thing. So I mean, what do you want to know? You can look it up.
I agree. Yes, 100%. And that's a good point. What I was getting at though is, did you uncover any definitive evidence or proof that you can look at and say, you know what, that lines up with what I learned on during that experience?
Well, I've read other experiences by other people, and some of the things they say, some of them parallel what I say, and some of them don't. All right, but I have been able to confirm everything that I said happening to other people. They said in their abduction experience. Not all of them were with praying mantises. I don't know how many people get abducted by praying mantises. Right? Most people get abducted by your 4 to 5 foot tall grays. When they get in the room, they get examined. Your typical 95% of your abduction experiences. All right. And I know there's 5 other species that are interacting with Earth. 5. All right.
And that's according to the praying mantis species that you experienced.
5 told me they themselves were aware of 5. They did also say there may be more that we do not know about, which also goes to show me that the ET phenomenon is compartmentalized within the Central Intelligence Agency and the industrial military complex. All right. Not everybody is working on the same thing. Even though there are different people working on different aspects of the UFO phenomenon, all right, not all of them are working on the very same project. So that's another wide open thing to this, because there's so many dots that can be connected that can also be covered up as far as to kind of machinery and computers and things like that we've gained from ET. I mean, look, my phone, that microchip in that phone came from ET. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that. You know, you're going to tell me some man sat down one day and said, I think I'll invent the integrated circuit, microprocessor, just out of the blue like that? No, that's back engineered from one of the craft at Roswell from 47. They told me in the Navy I had a very high IQ. Not that that means anything. All right. Some people make importance out of it. I don't. All right. I have common sense. I know how to use it. You know, and look, I'm just like everybody else. I'm trying to obsess under, and I'm trying to come to grips with the realities of what I experienced. That's why I say I went into a different dimension, because the things that people that describe that are so incredibly hard to believe, they had to go into another dimension in order to experience that if they were abducted.
If somebody is to choose to believe that what you're saying, that challenges their own belief system, because it's completely outside of what they have grown and learned throughout their life, and their entire belief system is challenged. And in order to accept that what you're telling them is truth, it completely, they have to change their belief system.
You're right.
And that's why people are uncomfortable.
Right.
That's why people are uncomfortable believing these type of experiences.
Oh, I get that. And look, I've been laughed at, ridiculed, called a liar, scoffed at, everything for the last, since 85. Probably from 85 up until about 97, 98 is when it stopped. And then, but I really haven't been accepted. I've been accepted in the UFO community. I belong to a lot of UFO groups, and a lot of people value my opinion, and not that I'm saying it's worth anything. It's just that I try to give a logical answer to all the comments, my comments. Try to be logical and self-explanatory. So, because I want everybody on the same page. Look, I can tell you the truth. I can't make you believe it. That's not up to me. That's up to you. My life, my experiences in my life are my life, and the experiences that I experience. I've had a couple other paranormal experiences in life. I've had time slow down.
Now, obviously, you're the experience that you had was facilitated in a small way by your friend Jeff. But do you think that the others, the ET's decision to bring you on board, do you think it had anything to do with your musical aptitude, your IQ, the type of work that you were in? Maybe a combination.
I think it was the fact that they knew I was above average IQ. Okay. I'm sure they had my test scores. They knew that I was a medical personnel. In other words, I was very serious about everything I did. I took my job seriously, because I was the face of the health and well-being of the crew, and it was my main job was to maintain that. So I took all my duties seriously, associated with my job.
Right.
And
okay.
And I think they felt that I was fairly mature.
Certain people seem to be targeted by these entities, and for an example, you had experiences later on in life too, with possibly different entities or a different race of entities, right?
The scoop mark incident was the only other one that I know of since then that I've had, that I'm aware of. Not that I was aware of it at the time, it's just that I became aware of it when I saw the scoop mark. Because I knew what the scoop mark represented. So that there. And I have no idea what race that was. And like I said, my brother, he had your typical 4 to 5 foot grays, that are 95% of your abduction experiences out there.
Do you think your brother was targeted because of your experience?
Yes. I was told, well, right after I started researching this, that if you're a twin and you've been abducted, your twin will get abducted too.
I believe that that's accurate. I've talked with a couple of other people, and other experiencers have had similar incidents where not only were they abducted and their siblings abducted, but also multiple generations going back, and then it continues on with their children. So
I've got a cousin too.
Sorry?
I've got a cousin also who was having experiences when he was 3, 4, 5 years of age, and it quit when he was around 6. And he's still trying to figure it out. All he gets is flashbacks back to those days. And none of them come in the right order. And he's confused about the whole thing. All right. But there's no doubt that he does. And now, this one, he's involved in Wicca, which is, a type of witchcraft study. And he participates in different things. And he's had a few experiences that are kind of abnormal. And all of them tied to Wicca. And I'm just letting you know. But so that's 3 of us in our family on my mother's side that had an experience out of everybody else in our family. And of course, everybody in our family thinks we're all nuts. Crazy as a loon. Yeah, well, I don't care. Like I said, I don't care what other people think. I put up with all the ridicule and all the hassle and all that crap decades ago. I'm so far past that, it's not even funny.
Have you ever undergone regressive hypnosis?
No, and I won't.
Why is that?
Because I told you, I was drained. I was fighting when I sat up in the bed on my ship. All right. And the thing before that was one of them putting their hand on my shoulder. All right. So from the time he put his hand on my shoulder until the time I was stopped fighting, which obviously I was fighting because they were doing something evil to me. I don't want to know what it was. I don't need to know. I don't care. All right. Yes, it'll make me aware, but I'm aware of enough. I don't need to know those answers.
That's fair. And just to put this out there, most people that have had abductions or that experience abductions, they do not want to have a regression to find out what they forgot or what they missed.
Well, I look at it this way. Obviously, the things that I was experiencing then, the reason I don't remember them is because they were able to block it out of my memory. And it must be that bad if they're going to block it out of my memory. So why do I want to try to find it? Obviously, they're protecting me by doing that. And a lot of people don't think about that.
But if what they were doing to you was so evil, why would they want to protect you from it?
Another question I can't answer. I wish I knew the answer. Trust me, I've asked myself that question a few times. But you know what? I don't go that deep into it. I don't dwell that far into it. Because I've already done that. I've gone down all them long caves years ago.
I
Years
understand
ago.
that, but for me, somebody who's interested in your experience, uh, these are questions that I have that when
And it makes sense.
when yeah. Sorry, man, my throat's getting a little bit dry. So I have a couple of other questions, but is there anything that you feel like we might not have covered in depth enough?
No. Unfortunately, the older I get, the less of this I remember. This happened 40 years ago, just about. And so I don't remember all the details that I did 20 years ago. I wrote my story out, and um, it was published in 2010 is when I wrote it. And it's 30 notebook pages long. And that's just describing a 1 hour event. 30 notebook pages.
So basically, what you've explained to me in this conversation that we've been having, plus probably a little bit more in detail in some areas, huh?
Yes.
What do you want people to take away from this experience that you went through, and how can it help other people?
The only thing I want people to know is that what I'm relating to them is the experience that I experienced while being abducted. And that it is absolutely true. 100%. I gain nothing by lying. Now, like I said, I tell you the truth. I can't make you believe the truth. That's totally up to you.
Okay, so let me ask another question, and this is kind of the same question but in a different way. Just to prompt you, because what I'm trying to get at is, why are you sharing this story with other people? What do you want people to learn from your experience?
That ET is real. What we think we know about the world and the way the world works is totally different than what you've been led to believe. Well, you have to get ready because ET is going to make themselves known. And once they do, whether you're prepared for it or not, you're going to deal with it. And you have a right to know the truth. Our government's been lying to us. When's the last time the government admitted anything about ETs and UFOs? Not until 2017. Before that, they don't exist. It's not true. Blah, blah, blah. And now all of a sudden, they release videos. What does that tell you?
Well, Kevin, I think that's a good place to leave it.
I enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, I want to see you have a full recovery, get back to playing your music, get back to your family, and enjoy the rest of your days on this planet.
Oh, I appreciate that.
All right, Kevin, it's been a pleasure talking to you, my friend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Oh, you have a good night, sir. And thank you very much.